said, and looking around, I've gone around, I've seen that it's actually full to the capacity, because when you look at the side where the ordinary Kenyans are supposed to be seated, it's full to the capacity, and even some of them have been locked outside. But like it's always done, we are hoping that after the parade, of course, the president will be ordering those who are locked outside to come in. And looking at the other side, that's the side of where the VIP will be seated.
Right.
Of course, President William Ruto and other dignitaries from the government.
Right.
And the other side, we see that's the side of school children who are invited to this particular function, and other national government administration and the other leaders also seated on the far end. And of course, before you came in, actually, there was a mock parade that was conducted here by the Kenya Defense Forces, just in preparation of what will exactly be happening. So we can say that people have turned up in large numbers, because it's not easy to fill a stadium in Embu, a stadium with a capacity of 10,000 people.
Right, and of course, this is I think the 9th or 10th celebrations that is happening in the counties. We have had one in Nyeri, we have had one in Meru, we have had one in Machakos, Kisumu, as well as Kirinyaga, Wanguru Stadium, and in Mombasa also, and now it has happened in Embu. Of course, it's something that most people have been watching these things happen on TV, and today it is happening here in Embu, and I believe maybe that's the reason the numbers are so many, and of course people are here. A large number of people who are here to follow up on what exactly is happening. And of course, we expect that also Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, it is his backyard. That's the Mount Kenya region. So, of course, we expect again some politics here and there of the Mount Kenya region, maybe to dominate. Of course, these celebrations coming at the backdrop of back and forth about the Finance Bill 2023 that has really caused a lot of political fodder to the politicians. Of course, the Kenya Kwanza side pulling to their side about the Finance Bill, and then the Azimio side saying that this is making the lives of Kenyans even become more difficult as the cost of living. They say that the cost of living is high, and President William Ruto has taken time to explain about the Finance Bill, especially the house levy. So I expect a lot to happen, even in matters to do with the speech by President William Ruto.
Yes, definitely, Karaoke. Of course, I had also earlier on mentioned that, of course, we expect President William Ruto to make certain comments on whatever is happening in the country, politically speaking, because just like you mentioned, the issue about the housing levy that has been proposed in the 2023, the Finance Bill of 2023. Of course, we have seen President Ruto trying so much, making use of every public opportunity that he gets to convince and explain to Kenyans why the housing levy is such important and why they should accept the Finance Bill of 2023 the way it is, despite the opposition, despite the negative comments from the opposition side. They are saying that the Kenya Kwanza government, Kenya Kwanza administration is actually adding tax to Kenyans who are already overburdened by taxes and the high cost of living. So just like you mentioned, those are some of the things that we expect President, his deputy and other leaders from the government side, of course, to be commenting about. And I'm also thinking maybe they will also be talking about the bipartisan talks, because we have also seen the Azimio Moja saying that they have suspended the bipartisan talks indefinitely. What does that mean, and what will that actually mean to the president and the talks that were moving forward, the talks that were supposed to end, the mass action that was called by opposition leaders?
And of course, Clement, this is the 60th Madaraka Day celebrations, and it is happening in Embu. And of course, again, we will hear from President William Ruto about the strides that the country has made for the 60 years that they have had self-rule. And we are going, of course, to be listening keenly to what he will say about his administration, bearing in mind that there is a lot that also the Kenya Kwanza government is looking forward to achieving in this fifth administration. And of course, we are going to be listening to what Kenyans have to tell us, and of course speak to some of the leaders from this area to just have a feel and a sneak preview of their expectations in matters to do with the Madaraka Day celebrations and President William Ruto's speech. And so later on, we are going to be having listening to Kenyans and what they have to say and their take, their opinion, views concerning this Madaraka Day celebrations. Residents from Embu County and the areas that surround this county. But for now, I want to take it back to Rogers in studio to just take it from there. Then later on, we are going to hear the views from Kenyans. Over to you, Rogers.
All right, those are live pictures from the Moi Stadium in Embu. You definitely see our team is on the ground just to keep you updated about the 60th Madaraka Day celebrations we're holding as a country. My colleagues Daniel Karaoke and Clement Masombo are definitely on the ground for us and will be crossing over in just but a few to get a feel of the celebration and those who have gathered at the stadium as we mark our 60th independence year. It's proper to note that in case you didn't make your way to Embu, we definitely have you covered right here on KTN News. We are set to have a little bit of deliberations right here in studio before the actual celebrations start at the Moi Stadium in Embu County. Even as we take stock of the journey we've had as a country ever since 1963, has the vision of our forefathers been actualized? Where do we need to tweak in order to make better strides in terms of, bringing forth that vision our forefathers actually had? Now, as you can tell, I'm a little bit youthful, but I have gentlemen who have the benefit of hindsight right here in studio. So we'll be delving deeper with them in terms of what I've just told you about, taking a look at the national ethos, the journey towards democracy, what exactly our forefathers fought for in terms of its actualization. I'm joined by two individuals in studio and we'll be listening to one individual through phone. Allow me to introduce this esteemed gentleman who made their time today despite the celebrations to actually give us a little bit of insights. I'm joined by Major Retired Peter Mwithi. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Karibu sana to the show.
Thank you, Rogers.
Yes, and happy Madaraka Day.
Thank you. Same to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Asante for your time. And equally joined by a familiar face, Professor Gitile Naituli. As always, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Karibu sana.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And happy Madaraka Day.
Happy Madaraka to you and the Kenyans.
Exactly. Later on, via way of phone, we'll listen from Leonard Mambo Mbotela, who's a veteran journalist, even as he gives us his insights on where Kenya is, where perhaps we want it to be, and the steps we need to take in order to actualize that all-important dream. So perhaps, gentlemen, let me just start with your feel in this Madaraka Day celebrations. Is there something to celebrate about? Or we should, call ourselves to a meeting and actually look at a couple of issues? Major Retired Peter, what say you?
Thank you, Rogers. I think, like the professor said, let me also wish all Kenyans, wherever they are, a happy Madaraka Day. This is a day that is very important in our national holidays calendar, and it's very significant in the sense that we are celebrating a day that the British colonialists, the imperialists, allowed us. They never allowed it. We forced them. Yeah. And if I may quote the founding father of this nation, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, he used to give us words that we should remember today, that we were not given all these freedoms, the self-internal governance through a silver plate. We fought for it. Yeah. It's a day that we should remember our forefathers. They did shed blood for us to be what we are today. And we should be happy. And we should remember them. It's a day that we should reflect where we came from since 1963 up to where we are. I think we have made a stride, although we have a lot of challenges ahead. If we look at our developments in this country, in terms of education, in terms of other institutions, we have made a pride. We have a new constitution, that is EOK 2010, which has a lot of good things for us. We have devolution. Prior to that, we remember we centralized everything in Nairobi here. to the expense of our counties down there. But that is also a stride that I can look at. When I was doing my A-levels, that was in 1970s, I remember very well, all our results were included in about 2-3 pages in our dailies. But today we have so many graduates, and I think a professor can attest to that.
Yes.
So we have made strides, although we have challenges, especially in political dimensions. We have a lot of problems. Our political leaders are not good governors. They are not good, most of them actually. We have taken this country to a lot of politics, rather to remember. And what we are missing in this country, if I may, if you allow me to say, is that we have bad governance. We have bad governance, and it is a shame to our forefathers.
Okay.
If they arise today from their graves and see the state of things in this country, I think we have a problem. The three things that they had a dream about is poverty, ignorance, and
disease.
And diseases. We have made a stride.
Okay.
We have made stride in those areas, although we have some challenges.
And we'll get to speak about those challenges,
Yeah.
even as we take note of the strides we've taken as a country. Prof. Naituli, I wasn't there in 1963, so the little I know is through research. From your point of view, with the benefit of hindsight, how have we come in terms of our development as a country?
You know, you said something very important here. You said, should we call ourselves into a meeting?
Yeah. Yes.
And I want to say that we needed to do that. We have a lot to celebrate, first of all. 60 years we have maintained peace, and that is absolutely important.
Yes.
We have created more poverty, unfortunately. And that is why a meeting will allow us to look at hits and misses, as the Daily Nation says in its headline today. We look at where we went wrong. Now, if you listened to Gito Akahengeri on Citizen by Jeff Koinange last night, then you understand that we actually didn't start forcibly, that we had a forced start. And of course, when you have a forced start, most of the times you may not really end up well unless you call yourself into a meeting. So that you can now say from here, which path should I follow? You see, Gito Kaingeri said that we really didn't get, of course we got a set of rule, this is a set of rule. But he says those who got the reins of power, they were the traitors. That Mzee was very clear. Now, why would it matter then between the freedom fighters, if they got, and the traitors? Because to measure level of your humanity, level of the capacity to love the citizens, and to give yourself fully to their service, you need a higher level of humanity. So if you are a home guard, then you are a traitor to yourself. Therefore, you couldn't really be trusted to put the country in a proper path. And that is the path now we are. We put our country, we created, let me say this, politicians, as opposed to creating leaders. The leaders, and these leaders now are those people who are in the Mau Mau. Those who are leaders. Kimathi, we survived. All the other Mau Mau luminaries. Those who are leaders. They would have brought the leadership into governance. And what that means is they will be preoccupied in thinking about the next generation. Politicians think about the next election. So you have short-term thinkers and long-term thinkers for the country. So we have run with the politicians, and I can tell you among all of them, the only person who came close to a leader is Mwai Kibaki. Mwai Kibaki, you can see what he did, even with the vision in 2030. He developed a document that transcended its presidency. That's what the leaders do. Yeah. They develop something that will outlive them. But nothing outlives a politician. So these are the misses that were we to call ourselves into a meeting, we can honestly confront our weaknesses. Because they say that those who fail to learn from history are condemned to learn from their mistakes. Because history, you are learning from mistakes of others, not yours. Yours is very expensive,
yes, true.
because you must suffer that process. So calling ourselves into a meeting, this, if we make this a day of reflection, instead, of course, we will hear speeches which will take you to trajectories, how much progress we have made, and so on.
Yeah.
It's a good thing, because we need to make ourselves a little bit happy.
Yeah, yeah.
We are living in a beautiful country.
Yes.
So we should make, but we need a dose of honesty. We need to wake up and realize we can do better. We are not condemned at this low level performance. That is not our destiny. Our destiny, because even with all these skills, you can see how much we have done. So now imagine, even from now on, we have leaders to lead us.
Okay, the potential cannot be fathomed, if I can use those words. So,
yes.
Major Peter, let's talk about something that perhaps he's brought up, because he's talked about the Home Guards on one side and Mau Mau. And over the last few years, we've heard of the agitation in terms of compensation for Mau Mau. I don't know if it has been politicized a little, due to the political rhetoric that has been made in reference to the Mau Mau. But when it comes to the freedom fighters and their plight around compensation and being honored, what do you make of what we've done as a country so far?
I think, in my own view, is that these gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, who sacrificed their lives for us to be where we are, for us to celebrate what we are celebrating this day, for us to have made these development strides in our country. I think, in my own view, they were forgotten somewhere. They were forgotten somewhere. And that generation which took over the power right from Jomo Kenyatta, the founding father of our nation, forgot these people. I can assure you, I am a patron of a section of Mau Mau leaders from where I come from, the Rakanizi, in Tunyai. When I go there in their meetings, they do it every Friday, and I hope everywhere they're doing it. I feel I shed tears when I see them. They have nothing to be happy about. One thing the Mau Mau veteran fought for, apart from those three things you have mentioned, is land. The division of land. Land was very, very, very keen in their minds. But how many of them got land? I think there should have been a policy to reward those people. But it's so unfortunate that most of them who are alive today are languishing in poverty. I think this government should be able to have a plan for those who are remaining, those who can be identified that they were true Mau Mau leaders, from, of course, their descendants who are still alive. They should be, something should be done to them. We should remember them. Otherwise, if it were not because of them, where would we be today? They sacrifice them. And let me tell you one thing that Kenyans need to know. As the professor said, during the transition from, or during the campaign of struggle for our freedom in this country, we had people who were Pan-Africanism. They had that statehood of the nation, of the continent. We had people who were nationalists. We had people who were patriotic enough, as opposed from today. The professor mentioned Jaramogi Oginga sometimes in your interview. This is one man who is a statesman. He got a chance of having leaders, of leading this country to the highest level, like our politicians are fighting to be presidents in this country. But he refused. Why? He knew there was someone who really fought hard and he deserved to be the leader of this country. We have also, for 1 minute, we have also some people in this country, some of them are deceased, who are patriotic enough. And I'll mention one of them because I had the chance of working with him, the former General Mulinge. When we had a coup in 1982, this fellow had a chance to take over the presidency of this country. But he said no. Because in the military, we are told our main objective is to defend our country. Simple. And he didn't want it. That was a chance. Okay. General Mahmoud also had a chance. And I hope if we have statesmen, nationalists, patriotic enough in the leadership of our country, then we would be somewhere. But in a nutshell, to answer your question, is that most of the Mau Mau veterans who fought for this country with their lives, I think they're forgotten. A policy should be done to remember those fellows, and they should be rewarded. You remember the other time, the former wife of the General Kemathi, how he died. His wishes were not fulfilled. And that is, to me, it's a shame. To me, it's a shame.
So allow us, just sorry to cut you short. And of course, you were just going back to the late Mama Kimathi, who just passed on recently. Her wishes weren't actualized in terms of giving the late Dedan Kimathi a befitting burial. Before we cross over to Prof, allow us to go back to Embu and just listen to the sentiments being shared by Kenyans who have turned out in their numbers in order to celebrate the 60th Madaraka Day. We cross over to my colleague Daniel Karaoke, who's just joining us. Morning and happy Madaraka Day. What are Kenyans saying?
Happy Madaraka Day to you, Jesse Rogers, and of course you said it right. We are at the Moi Stadium in Embu County, where the 60th Madaraka Day celebrations are currently underway, or rather supposed to be taking place. And as we speak right now, looking at the program of today, just like I had told you earlier, is that at around 10:30 is when the official celebrations kick. And we expect that the Guard of Honor is going to be marching into their position, and then President William Ruto will have arrived for the Guard of Honor. And of course, we are going, it's just around 50 something minutes to that 10:30 a.m. So for the celebrations to officially start off here in Embu County. But as you have said, Jesse, this being the 60th Madaraka Day and happening here in Embu County, for the first time outside Nairobi County for the 5th administration. I want to hear what the Embu residents have to say concerning these celebrations here. And just like Clement Masombo had informed you that the stadium is full to capacity, but I'm at the northern wing of the stadium, because there is northern, there is southern, eastern, and western. The western is the VIP pavilion, and it's almost full capacity also, with expectations that President William Ruto and other dignitaries are going to be making their way into the VIP pavilion. But from the northern side wing of this stadium, I want to speak to several of the residents from Embu to hear their sentiments concerning the celebrations here in Embu County. And I want to speak first to some of the ladies who are seated here. Thank you very much. This is KTN News. We are live on KTN News. And of course, this is the first time that Embu County is experiencing national celebrations. Maybe I want to just hear from you. What's your expectations about maybe what is going to be taking place, including President William Ruto's speech? You start with your name, please.
Okay, I'm Perpetua Maina, and what I'm expecting from the president ni bei uchumi iko juu sana, so ishukishwe, like bei ya skari ishukishwe, like sisi like us the students tunaumia sana. Yeah.
Also, you are a student, so your expectation is that the president will address on the cost of living.
Yeah.
Let me hear from your neighbor here, and thank you very much. Of course, starting with your name, maybe you can tell us your name. And it's the first time that this celebration is taking place in Embu County. How do you feel as an Embu resident?
My name is Anne, and I'm so happy for the celebration to be in Embu County, and tunashukuru our president so much kwa kutuletea the celebration here. Actually, it's my first time to be in such a celebration, and tunashukuru sana juu tumepata wageni wengi, and tunaomba they'll go to another county na tutaenda huko pia. Thank you.
And of course, this stadium has actually been constructed in less than 6 months by the military. It has been a long time that this stadium has not been having construction going on. How do you feel also as a resident having now a stadium in your county?
We appreciate, and the stadium is so beautiful, and we want to thank our governor, Honorable Cicely Mbalile. She has taken very few days to make this stadium, and tunashukuru sana, tunasema pongezi kwake, kazi mzuri anayofanya kavinda negaka.
That's Kiembu, eh? For gender purposes, I have one gentleman here who is going to also to be telling us about his expectations. Warembo hapa wanasema cost of living iko juu sana, and also they appreciate the fact that the celebrations ziko hapa Embu. Maoni yako kwa kwanza kwa jina lako?
Kwa majina naitwa Newton Mwaneki. Tumefurahia sana hii Madaraka imeletwa huku kwetu Embu. Tujaiona hivyo tena. Tumefurahia sana. Tunataka kuambia president at least atupunguzie bei ya kaunga na kasukari hivi. Kwa hivyo tunatarajia.
Asante sana. Thank you very much. Let me just have more statements from different residents of Nyeri, our Embu County rather, to just have a feel of what they expect today to be happening here. Sijui hapa kuna watu ambao wana maoni, labda tusikie yale ambayo watatuelezea. Labda unaweza kutuelezea jina lako, na leo ni siku ya Madaraka Day, the 60th Madaraka Day hapa katika county ya Embu. Wewe ni mwenyeji wa hapa Embu?
Mimi kwa majina naitwa Robin. Mimi ni mwenyeji wa hapa Embu. Kitu ya kwanza ni kufurahia juu ya ngavana wetu kutuletea hii sherehe hapa kwetu Embu. Juu imekuwa kwa miaka mingi hatujawahi pata sherehe kama hii. So tunashukuru sana ngavana wetu. Then bado tunangoja rais wetu aweze kufika na tumeongoja.
Acha nikukatize tu kidogo. I understand that the Speaker of the National Assembly is on the other side with my my colleague Clement Masombo. Let's listening to what he's saying.
Live pictures from the Moi Stadium in Embu, newly refurbished by the national government through the military. And of course, we've just heard from some of the residents, very ecstatic, looking forward to the celebrations and quite hopeful in terms of the president's speech. One thing that's synonymous, the cost of living, from what you've heard from the student crossing over to the other individuals as well. So let's continue with the conversation right here. And in terms of what has been said, Professor, how was it back then? Did, in terms of leaving school, would you have to look for a job, or did a job look for you? You know, we hear those stories, yeah?
That time in the early 60s, 70s,
yes,
80s, even all the way to 90s, the job actually looked for you.
So how can we go back to such a situation?
No, we can. All we need to do is to get leaders who love us. Okay, not the leaders we love. We need the leaders who love us. There's a difference. Because when the leaders love you, then they can do things for you. You remember when Magufuli took power in Tanzania, he had a budget to celebrate Tanzania's independence. But then a week before, he happened to go to an hospital which didn't have enough beds and blanket. He told them all the money which was supposed to go into this celebration, as it is in Madaraka Day, I wanted to buy beddings and beds, and I want that hospital to capacity. So look at that. Because usually a national celebration is a show off for the president. But this is somebody with a heart. He said this will be a waste compared to what that money will do in that hospital. So if we are lucky and able to get the leaders like that, it's possible to go back, because it means growing the economy for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think today there's a professor who read a piece from, I think, a Nigerian, who was a politician and now a businessman. And he said that politicians manufacture poverty and the leaders create wealth. I like that definition.
Yeah.
So for us to go where the youth recruiters in school, because in Form 6, in fact, when I was in Chuka High School, people from industry were interviewing us in school for a job before you even go to the university. Okay? Those were those early years. So to go back there, we needed to abandon the self-love, the self-aggrandizement, which has now come to define national leadership. The government must cease to be the source of wealth for Kenyans. You see, when the government is source of wealth, they were more created any wealth. You see, you have merely grabbed. And if you look at who is rich in Kenya, either worked with the government or trained with the government. There is no space for self-creation. Okay, self-made millionaires who create a product, because it's very easy. We have shifted our compensation to the politics. I mean, just be simple like that.
Yeah.
We have shifted everything to the politics, because today you have an MCA with a Form 4 certificate.
Okay.
I think exactly the same as a full professor in the university. And then the leadership, access to leadership is also access to corruption. We need to change that trajectory in order to recreate those years.
Okay.
But I guess if you have time, I will tell you also, the Kenyans themselves also need to become almost like a mzee I met in Narok. He mentioned about the 1982 coup. That is the person who educated me most about the politics. The mzee, for some reason, he came to me. We are coming from Masai Mara. Then he asked me, nimesikia serikali imepunduliwa. Imepeleka upande gani? So,
Okay.
So I told them, it's not like that,
Yeah.
but the president was there being removed, and the one had come. Then he asked a crucial question. He said, the one who has come, does he know where the medicine for the cow come from? So I said, he's the president, he must know. Then the next question he asked is, we have a market here, which we sell our cows. Will the market still be there? So I told him the market will be there, because you pay something when you go to the cows.
Yeah.
This is what he said. That mzee said, Washakai. He didn't ask which tribe. Okay?
Yeah.
He just looked down, he's going to be affected.
Yeah.
If we do like that as a country, we will get better leaders.
Interesting. And it sort of boils down to equally the people who put these politicians, as you refer them, into these seats of power. Does it boil down to the national ethos we hold as a population, as Kenyans? But I want to engage you on the 1982 coup, because you're a military man. I'm pretty sure you are on active service then. How was it during the 1982 coup? In terms, yes, attempted coup, yes. How was it, sir?
Okay, in 1982, luckily enough, I was a senior sergeant, working in Kawa Barracks as an education instructor, because I joined the army as an education instructor. And to tell you and to remind Kenyans, those who are not old enough during that day, it was a sad day for this country, a sad week for this country. Because what I saw, I did not imagine it. It was a sad day. There was a lot of looting here and there. Thank God, the Kenya Army took another swap. They did not support that mutiny. We suppressed that mutiny. Within 1 week, we were able to put everything in order and took back the leadership to Moi. I myself saw Moi crying in officers' mess in Kahawa when he was brought in by Mulinge. And I said thanks to those military leaders during that time. And Professor will agree with me, they had what we call integrity, loyalty. I think even today the military has integrity. Yeah, and I think it's very good to mention here that not because I served in the military, one of the institutions in this country which is really performing, and most of the people in that institution hold integrity, leadership. Of course, we have one or two people here who can mess around because we are human, actually.
Yes.
But it is one of the institutions that Kenyans should be proud of, as opposed to some military institutions in the West African countries who every day there's a coup and coup d'etats in those countries.
And we've seen what's happening in Sudan.
We have seen what's happening in Sudan. We have seen what's happening in Somalia. We have seen what is happening in various countries.
Okay.
You understand? So to go back to the scenario that was there in 1992, it was very sad. But again, it gave us a lesson that if we have bad governance, things will happen. There was the leader of that coup, that is Corporal Ochuka, and Senior Sergeant Pancras. I happened to be working with them because I was an education instructor also in Women's Service Corps, which was army unit for the women co-allocated in the Air Force Base here in Moi Air Base. So I knew those gentlemen. Even when they were court-martialed in Langata, we were there. There was one warrant officer who is a friend of mine, he was an education instructor. He was given an opportunity to translate. These were from 6 fellows, but because they had a problem there, they actually said they want it to be run in Kiswahili, and that warrant officer went inside there for 1 good week, translating whatever was happening there.
Okay.
The court martial took a period of 1 week. Then on a Friday, the end of the court martial, they were found guilty of trying to bring about the mutiny in a democratic country which had a constitution, to overthrow the leadership of the late Moi, and they were executed, I think, in committee, and I think those were the last people to be executed, to be killed. But it was a sad day. There was a lot of looting. Within a period of over the weekend, there was a lot of looting, there was a lot of problems. People were worried, they didn't know where we are going. But a swift action was taken by the, it was called Kenya military.
Yes.
It was Kenya Army who took over under the leadership of Mulinge and General Mahmoud. And they started taking over the KBC. It was okay by that time. And I think the other gentleman whom we have already invited through will come and tell us what happened. But we took time to bring things in order. And that is what we want in this country. We want a military that is so dedicated, it has integrity, it knows its mandate according to our constitution, and that is what is happening. I still praise the military. I've worked there for 34 good years, and we have taught the young officers who are coming in and think that is what is exactly happening, that our mandate is to protect the boundaries of our country. That is the Kenya Navy has a role to take all the water masses, to defend the water masses in case the intruder comes in. The Kenya Army, who are called what were boot, then the land boundaries, and the Air Force, any enemy who comes in there. And that is what we are doing. But there is a misconception of the civilians thinking that in the army we only take pombe, luxury, and when they see vehicles coming in, there's a lot of training going on. And that is why we are able to be applauded by the United Nations for peacekeeping in our region, in our East African region, in the country. And the first people, the first Kenya military took up the United Nations role in Yugoslavia, in Sierra Leone, and other countries. But I don't wish what I saw in 1992 to happen in this country. For it not to happen, we must love our country. We must have political leaders who have a will, as the professor said, the integrity, and they have the will to do what is happening. The problem which we have in here is corruption, tribalism, and people of leadership do not have dedication to this country, as opposed to what our forefathers dreamed about. So I think every Kenyan has a role to play in the administration of good governance for this country. Let us not leave it to the politicians. The politicians can take this country to the dogs. And because we don't have a lot of time, I would urge the 2 principles: the president and the opposition leader. He's not the opposition leader. We don't have that in the constitution. He's a minority leader. For them to sit down, 2 of them, it is not necessarily the handshake issue, but to see where they want to take Kenyans. Right now, we have a very big problem of the high cost of life, as those students who are talking about. They should sit down. They should forget for a while, the lieutenants who are surrounding them, and who are surrounding Raila, who are surrounding our president, and I'm sure the president has a good vision for this country. Because he has experience, and the Baba has also done a lot for this country. Okay. If they two sit down, if they will be able, I don't know.
I can tell you why there won't be
we can go where.
I tell you why there will not be an attempted coup or a coup.
Yes, Professor.
Because that will not be necessary. The constitution which we have, Article 1, it declares that sovereignty belongs to the people of Kenya. And they choose to donate that authority to other institutions. So you take a small portion and give to judiciary, you give to the executive, you give to parliament. If the government goes wrong, to the extent that it is no longer deserving of that donation, that citizens can peaceably take it back. So you don't need violence and you don't need the military. You simply reclaim what is yours by right. So the framers of this constitution gave people a way out. Because that time there was not really a way out. It was a different setup. In the current dispensation, constitutional dispensation, if you are doing something openly, okay, you disagree with this, and you take the view that there is no mechanisms for correcting by those you have donated the power to, then you can invoke that constitutional provision. In other words, you can dissolve parliament and the executive before the election comes in. But to do that, you need to invoke the constitution and the people need to agree with you because the sovereign. And now I'm talking about if you are to be the leader.
Yes.
If you are the leader of that kind of a process. So this constitution is a stability document because it guarantees us that we are not alone. That if something is going wrong, we have a way of correcting it without injuring ourselves or injuring anyone else. So this is the beauty of the 2010 Constitution.
Now, let's talk about some of these vices that has been mentioned time and time again. Ethnicity, corruption. And Prof, I'll start with you. Was it always a mentality that, you know, once you get to government, it's our time to eat? Has it always been that way? Where did we go wrong along the annals of history so that we can actually, you know, pinpoint the problem and try and walk towards the solution?
Actually, yes. Was it always? I think, you know, that's a good question. Instead of you answering you philosophically, it requires actually some thoughtful approach. Granted, when we look at the Kenyatta government, of the first government, it had an over presentation because unfortunately also at the time they had more education than the other Kenyans. So it's very handy to say that Kenyatta was a tribalist at heart. It's become fairly difficult to assess from the over-representation at the time. But then over the years, exit Kenyatta, over the years, the other president was also a very good humanist. In fact, President Moi, when you look at him, he was a proper human being. A true Kenyan in terms of loving the country. But then he overstayed. And the people around him abused that trust he had with them, and they packed the civil service with the people from his tribe. But if you listen to that Mzee, and if you saw it, you saw a genuine nationalist who would really like to unite the country. And then in now comes Kibaki. So Kibaki becomes an economist. He zeroes in on developing the country, and it does not, and it designs that he needs stability. He therefore needs to mix Kenyans in the civil service so that you have the face of Kenya. But again, just like Kenyatta before him and Moi, well, just like President Moi, not Kenyatta really, the people around him, Murungaro, Christopher Murungaro, I don't know, Matiri Gireri, the former governor of Meru around there, they also designed to go underneath and essentially not adhere to balance. Okay?
Yeah.
But then Kibaki was patient. He proposes the vision 2030, which has a very strong element. It was the economic, then it's socio-political. So the socio-political angle stressed heavily on having a face of Kenya in public institutions. Okay, so people even don't remember that the Kibaki governed us with actually the old constitution, not the new one. He initiated the new one in 2010. So when the new constitution came, borrowing heavily from that, it's also heavy on inclusivity. When you look at Article 10, Article 232, and even Article 27, because Article 27 declares that every citizen is equal before the law and is entitled to equal benefits of the law. Okay? So when you look at Article 10, inclusivity, principles of public service, Article 232, about regional balance, about affording everybody opportunity. So the complaint you're hearing now is that it looks like the current administration is not looking at those those three articles. It looks like that. Okay? Now, the idea of is our time, this is why Gidongo differed now with technocrats around Mwai Kibaki. Because for them, it became our time to eat. But you see, if you continue with that kind of philosophy, it's going to reach the level where even you have nothing to eat. Because to eat, you must create.
Yes. Well.
So it will reach the level where there will be no creating. Because what I remember is during the kind of President Moi days, there was no money. Okay? There was no money. All the roads were finished. Because people simply boycotted paying taxes. Quietly. There is nothing you can do about that because you can't enjoy the whole country. So when people don't trust, when trust is withdrawn, because people trust their government, trust that it is working for them, and they support their government through payment of their taxes. Once they suspect that you are not doing things right, that you are now considering your time to eat, they will withdraw that support. When the support is withdrawn, there will be less and less taxes. So there will also be nothing for you to eat. That is why we want nationalists. That's why we are saying that the country needs to be governed under the terms of the contract, which is 2010 Constitution, so that there is a face of Kenya in every institution, and the Kenyans feel that they are Kenyans. They belong and they are represented. Okay. It becomes so important.
And as you come in, because as in the current scenario we have in the country, we have a population that might feel disenfranchised, perhaps due to the way the government is conducting its affairs. And we've had talk of secession. What would be the reaction of our forefathers if they hear such? And number two, is it a long-lasting solution to call for secession from where you sit, despite the disenfranchised feeling,
Okay, the narrative of secession did not come today with the political play out of the opposition. It was there soon after independence. Remember Ngala, who is a representative of coast politics, he had this philosophy of Majimboism, which you have already adapted in the 2010 Constitution, that in Kiswahili we call it Magatuzi. It is good in a way because it is giving the powers to grassroots development. You remember when we transited, or during the colonial period, there were some communities in this country who are referred as marginalized. NFD region, even Madaraka, where I came from. Yeah? The pace of the development in those communities is not equal to other communities. Yes. When the professor talked about Kikuyus, the community of Kikuyus, and I'm talking in a positive way, not in a tribalistic way, yeah. It's a geographical issue which favored them and historical issues When we got independence, most of them, by the version that they were near where these Wazungus were, and most of them were children of the home guards, took up the education. And let me make it very clear, and the professor will attest to that, that there is no way a country can develop without education, without empowering its citizen with education. Education is one most important, critically vital for the development of this country. So there were some communities which were really marginalized. And sometimes I really wonder and get worried when the politicians come with this narrative of 1 shilling, 1 vote,
one man,
one shilling, one vote, whatever you, without realizing that if we go by that and pass it in our laws, there are some counties or communities which were left behind by the colonialists in terms of the development. And when the regime of Kenyatta came, they were also forgotten. And when the Moise regime came, they were forgotten. When Kibaki's regime, good thank for Uhuru, because there was this promulgation of the new constitution 2010.
You remember, it is actually Moi who set up the current counties, basically. The Moi created the Madaraka district. He created actually Nyambene district. But unfortunately for Nyambene, they delayed in settlement. The fellows from women, I think they missed the revenue from Mirad and so on. So they delayed the settlement. But otherwise, and the Lamu, all the so-called marginal areas, it was Moi who tried to harmonize. Moi and something akin to devolution. Yeah? It was called rural development, something for rural. What was the program? For rural development. So, you see, Moi was thinking properly. It's, I think, this Manyimbo, these units we're having now as a unit for devolution in the counties, majority of them were actually created by Moi in an attempt to correct what he is calling marginalization, which I've never really liked that term myself. Because accident of history cannot be equated to marginalization. Marginalization is when you actively discriminate. When there is laws saying that people from Madaraka should not do business or cannot do this, that is marginalization, because the law is marginalizing. But I'm saying accident of history because even in Meru County, we have difference between the people of Tigania, Igembe, and Imenti. The Imenti fellows went to school. These other ones, they didn't like the Muzungu education system. They refused until 1970s. I'm the second generation to go to school from that area. You therefore cannot say they meant marginalized. You can't say that because that is an accident of history. So it was wrong for us to accept the language of marginalization in the constitution. Because I tell you what it does psychologically. It makes some Kenyans feel that they're entitled reparation by others, and it makes others feel guilty that they marginalize someone when they did it. So the Central Kenya development was in both accident of history and good economic reasoning.
Okay.
Because you need to put the money where you get more money.
Okay, gentlemen, allow us to veer back to Embu. I'm informed the team on the ground, including our reporter